Hey guys, and welcome to Tutorial 58, and on an unrelated note, I've been playing entirely too much Guild Wars. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at what I did. So I pretty much have done the same thing I did in the previous video where I did all the code already, pushed all the code to GitHub, and now I'm going to just kind of show you what I did. And what I was going to do in this video was do binary file loading and saving, but I'd rather do that line by line with you guys. Instead, I made a text file saving and loading system for basically saving our levels as kind of human readable text. And not tomorrow, in the next video, we'll go over why having a text file loader isn't really the best and why we should instead use a binary one. But today we're just going to be going over the simple stuff. So let's go ahead and load up a file I made. So I have this dumblevel.txt. As you can see, when I click the new load button here, it brings up this load level thing. I can click dumblevel.txt and load it in. So as you can see, it just immediately loads that file in, and it's just loading it from a text format. And I can actually pull up this text file for you. So here's what it looks like. As you can see, it's just a bunch of numbers and things. So like here's the version number, and then we've got the player's information. It's got like his position and his dimensions and his color. We've got all the different blocks here. There are 11 blocks. And we have booleans for like if they're dynamic, we store their rotation values, all that stuff. And we have the same thing for lights. We have the color, and pretty much just all the information we need to actually save and load a level is saved into those files. So we can make some changes here. We can like drag some stuff around, move this way over here, move this light way over here, or something, make the floor drop out from under the player, and make the player fall to his death right over here or something. Oop, I gotta actually click the right thing. There, player's gonna fall to his death. So now what we can do is we can save it. So we go to save, and it brings up a very similar looking file dialog. This is the save level dialog. Now we can click the drop down and it'll show us all the levels we already have saved. So we can just resave over the same file here, or we can save a new one. So I'm going to resave over the same file. I'll click save. And now if I go to load it, so if I like drag the player and maybe move something over here, if I load it again, you'll see that they get restored in their old position because it does load the file. Now there is a bug that I haven't been able to figure out. If you click back and go back into Level Editor again, Sprite Batch no longer works. It tries to draw everything. It's trying to draw the level. Like if I even load the level here, it loads everything in and it's trying to draw it, but it fails. I wanted to fix this bug before I showed you guys this video. However, I just didn't get around to it. It was taking me several hours and I just could not figure out what was going on. So I'll tell you guys what some of my ideas are for what's causing the bug. Maybe you guys can help figure it out, and I will definitely try to get that bug fixed by the end of this series. So let's go ahead and jump into the code. I want to show you guys what I actually did. So we're going to exit. There was actually a lot of changes. There were some engine changes, and then there was a good deal of UI changes that went into this. So let me pull up GitHub here. Now what I'm going to show you first is probably just the engine stuff again, because that's the easiest to digest. So let's go into gltexture.h. That's one of the files I changed. And of course, check the description of this video. You will see a link that has all of these changes, every single one of them listed. So you'll be able to see anything I miss, or just look at the actual lines of code that are changed. So here in gltexture, I added a string for the file path. I wanted to be able to remember what the actual file path for a texture was, so that when I went to actually save the player's textures or the box's textures, and I'm actually not saving the player textures, when I went to save the box's textures, I could actually look at this and save this file path, which is what you're seeing whenever I show you this. As you can see, it has the file paths for all of the bricks. And it's duplicated. You could actually make this format better so that we aren't duplicating this. Like you could actually have some kind of a key value store that's saved into this file, but I just didn't go that far. And now this actually gets set inside the image loader that we have. So if we go to Bingen, we have a Resource Manager. There we go. Resource Manager. It calls texture cache.getTexture, which in turn calls image loader load PNG. And in here, I just went ahead and set that, and it's set at the bottom. File path equals file path. So I also made some changes to IO Manager, and this was actually a pretty big change. If you go into iomanager.h, you will see there are two new functions. There's get directory entries, and there is make directory. Now this was useful for actually scanning and seeing how many levels we have, so I'm going to drag this over here. As you can see in Ninja Platformers, I've made a new directory, levels, and it gets created with this make directory function call. And in there, there's all the there's going to be a bunch of directory entries for all the files we have. So that get directory entries, what it's going to do is it's going to iterate over all of these and it's going to basically store the string and then a boolean, here a string and a boolean, that basically describes that entry. So it'll be either a directory or not a directory, and then we'll have the path of it relative to, I believe, just our working directory. So if we go into here, I'll actually show you what this is doing. So I included a new file, include file system. You should have this on your machine, but if you do not have this on your machine, you would have to look into another way. Like you can do an operating specific way to iterate over directory entries, or you can use boost file system or Dialog.h. There's lots of options for you guys to use, but this hopefully will work depending on your compiler and depending on your system. So in here I have this fs, that's just a namespace alias for stdtr2 sys, which was just annoying to type. You can just shorten it by doing this. Nice little trick for you guys. And all it does is it checks if the path that you pass in is a directory, and if it's not a directory, it of course returns false because we can't iterate over entries in something that's not a directory. And then it just loops through all of those using an iterator that is provided to us by that file system header file. And then it's really simple. We just check if it's a directory, set it to true or false, set the path, get the string. You guys will be able to read this, no problem. So that's it for get directory entries. Make directory just makes a single function call to fs create directory. Also super duper simple. Now let's go into SpriteBatch.h. I made a change there, SpriteBatch.h. So here I added a dispose function so that you can actually call that and destroy your buffers. Because before we had basically a GPU memory leak where you couldn't actually destroy those. I noticed that and added it. I'm sure there's lots more problems with our engine, but of course this is just kind of a practice engine for you guys, so it's okay that we have some problems with it. Now, Sprite Font Dot H, this is open by another project. That's weird. So in Sprite Font Dot H, I was really upset with the way it was working. We didn't have this default constructor, and we didn't have these init functions, so you could only create it in an initialization list or by using a pointer and setting these up. So now I made it so that you can have a raw object in your header file that isn't initialized in the initialization list, and you can later call init on it. That was really important for me. I like being able to do that so that you can actually reinitialize something without having to delete it and then remake it. So that's it for Sprite Font. Let's go into box.h. Got some simple changes there. We view box.h. So here I just added a bunch of getters. And I also added some new variables, so we actually store the rotation and the isDynamic. I'm not sure if those were there before. I don't think they were. And then we, of course, have all these getters, or these accessors. And you'll notice I made them really nice and pretty. I aligned them. You should definitely do this with your functions. People will thank you for it when they have to come read this, because it's much easier to read this than it is to read something that is just all kind of messy and not aligned. So that's it for box.h, and the only thing left is editor screen, I believe. So let's go to editor screen. Now I added a bunch of new controls, and I also added some vectors here. So we've got a frame window for the loading and a frame window for the saving, and then we have some buttons and combo boxes for each of them, because each of those dialogues that pop up for clicking the load button and the save button are different. And then we also have these two vectors here of CEGUI listbox text items, and these are the items that get added to the combo box. So I'll show you that combo box again in case you forgot. Load this up, level editor, load. So this right here, this DUM level right here, this is what's going to be stored inside that vector. Now we have to store them there because we can't just pass a raw object to the, or a non-pointer. Basically, we have to pass a pointer to the function that actually adds that item to the combo box, and I'll actually show you that. That is going to be in on save. No, it's going to be on save clicked, I believe. Or here, on load mouse click and on save mouse click do the same thing. So I'll just show you this one. Here, add all files to the list box. This is where it adds it. You'll see that we have to push back those list block items, and then we have to add that exact pointer. Now, we call new here, but we don't actually have to call delete, because when we destroy our GUI later, CEGUI, I'm pretty sure automatically deletes these, because when I was deleting them myself, I was getting a crash, and when I looked at the memory for those values, they were set to a value that indicated free heap memory, meaning that CEGUI was in fact deleting them for me. So that's nice. But yeah, this on load mouse click is what happens when you click on the load button at the bottom left, and it just does some really simple stuff. First, it clears the combo box and removes all the items from it in case we had some stuff there. Then it gets all the directory entries with our new IO manager function here. And then it just adds all files to the list box. So if it's not a directory, that means it's a file, and we're going to assume that anything in that directory that's not a directory is a level file. So if you try to just put a random text file in there and then try to load it, you'll probably crash the game. It's only supposed to have files in there that are valid level files. Now you can, there is some error checking in the loading code that'll check for a version number, and if that version number is not set, it'll say that the file is corrupted, but it's very basic, and you guys could definitely try to improve that. And then of course we just have like random code for enabling the loading window and disabling the saving window when we're clicking on the load one, and then the opposite for when we're clicking on the save one. And then there's some new functions in here that really don't do much, like the onload cancel click. It's just going to disable that window. Really easy stuff. Make sure you check that link in the description. Now, editor screen on save, this right here, we have to make sure that we have a player. If you don't have a player, it's not going to let you save the file. That's just a constraint I put to make the code easier, because we always want a player anyways in a level, or we're not going to be able to play the level. And we make the levels directory in case it's not already there, just to be safe. If you call this and the directory already exists, it's just going to return false, I believe, and it's not going to actually do anything bad. And then we're going to save in text mode. So here's where we actually save that file as text. We have this save as text function in this LevelReaderWriter class that I created that I'm going to show you. And it's going to just save all of our data. It's going to save the boxes, the lights, the player. It's going to save it to this should be, instead of text, this should probably be file path, but I called it text. That's fine. It was bothering me, so I'm going to change it. That's going to save it to that file, and if it succeeds in saving it, then it's going to disable the save window and put in the command prompt file successfully saved. If it fails, it's going to say that it failed to save the file. So let's go ahead and look at this class I made, this LevelReaderWriter. So this is the class that handles saving and loading our level files. And if you wanted to, you could split this up into two classes, one for saving, one for loading. I just liked doing it this way. Now, as you can see, it's a static class. It has no member variables that are non-static, and it has no non-static functions. And we have two ways of saving. We have save as text and save as binary, and we have load as text and load as binary. However, the binary ones are not implemented, which you will see. So if we go into the CPP file for that, LevelReaderWriter.cpp, here at the top you're going to see some version numbers. So I just picked 100 arbitrarily. You don't want to pick 0 for your first version number, because it's very common for a random file to have 0 in front of it, you know, like just bytes of zeros at the beginning, so it would possibly be registered as a valid file. So with this, as long as the file has bytes in it, and the first bytes are not 100, that first integer, then you're going to probably be okay, and it's going to detect that there's a corrupted level file, or it's an invalid level file. But there's of course much better ways to do this than just doing that. And so that's version 0, and then we have the current version, which is version 0. Now the reason we're doing this is because when we want to change our level file, say we want to add the finish that I still haven't done, or add some enemies and things like that, we don't want to just change our existing code, because there might be people using our game that have the old version. So what we would do instead, say if we wanted to make a new version, we would say const unsigned int text version 2 or 1, and we'll say like 101 or something like that, and that's the next version number. So when we go to load a file, we'll have these two version numbers that are possible. If we see the second version, then we'll just use our newest file loader. However, if they're using an old version of the file, then what we'll do is we'll load it with our old code, which we have right here, load as text v0. That's what this is for. When we make a new version, we'll just add a new function. We won't actually destroy this function or anything like that. And we'll load it with that old version, and then we can convert it to the new version. Really useful stuff. You want to make sure you can do that, or you're going to have some very unhappy players when all of their save files don't work after your update. So save as text is just going to call the most recent version of save as text, which is save as text v0. And I'm not going to really go through this in super detail because it's all stuff that you know. We just use upstream to open a file, and then we're just writing a bunch of data separated by spaces, and you know, there's some new lines in there just to make it slightly human readable. You can make this more human readable if you want, but we're not expecting people to really go in and mess with those values themselves. They totally can go in and change those values to screw with your text file, but that's what the level editor is for. There's no need to do that. So that writes all that out. Now, save as binary, not implemented, of course. Load as text is pretty much the same thing that I explained earlier. What it's going to do is it's going to read that version. So there's the version number that we write at the very beginning. If I go to save as text v0, you'll see right here at the top, first thing we do is write text version. And then, and this should actually probably be text version v0, since this is specifically the v0 one, and that's going to be a huge bug if we were to try to save a v0 function when we did not have v0 as the most recent one. Oh, just text, it's just a 0, not v0. What am I doing? I'm all over the place today. Text version 0. So that writes it, and then we read it in load as text. So we get that version, and then we can do a switch statement based on that version. So if the version is 0, then we're going to load with v0. And if it's not, then it's an unknown version. We're going to say it's corrupted or something. So later, when you add more versions of your file, you can add them right here and branch off and then do the different loadings. So if we go to load as text v0, you'll see here, this is where it actually loads everything in. We've got reading the player, reading the boxes, and reading the lights. And I'm not going to really explain how this works because it's the exact opposite of all of this code right here. So everything that we're doing here is mirrored down here for reading in all of the stuff. And it works perfectly. So that's pretty much it. Today was a short video. I spent most of my time today just trying to fix that freaking bug that I still did not figure out. So like I said, if you guys have any ideas, go ahead and let me know. Otherwise, I will be spending more time in the coming weeks trying to figure that one out. And if you have any questions, as always, leave a comment, or if there's any concerns, you think I'm doing something stupid, go ahead and let me know. Don't be afraid to do that. And I will see you guys next time.